Kia ora koutou, Markie here. So first of all, must apologise for my low-tech approach. I don't really apologise for it because it's me and I'm unmasked and neurodivergent, and that's just the way it is. But I apologise for the fact that you can sometimes get this kind of jazzing effect when I point my camera at my computer screen, and if that gives you migraine or epileptic seizures or anything like that, then please don't watch, just listen to my soothing tones. Most of my videos are podcasts. I give you something to look at just as a bonus, really. And when I'm out and about in the mobile studio, you get to see the beautiful briny, for example, or forest or mountain. When I'm at home, sometimes I point the camera at myself, but I don't like to inflict that on you too often. I like to just have something running, just to give you something to look at. And the reason, what you're seeing now is a lady not called Nelly, and I'll explain all in a moment. And I don't think she'll mind me showing her video in the background of the screen, because I want to plug her channel a bit and get you to send her some love. But we'll get into all that in a moment. So this is well, first of all, kind of buckle up, my beauties, because this might be a long one. Because this combines two topics that I have a particular interest in. So the first is narcissists and psychopaths. Wow, that's two topics, isn't it? Let's bundle them all together then into potentially toxic personality types, or pathologies. Let's not get too hung up with defining the group of things that I'm interested in. And the other is spirit possession is a thing that I'm interested in. Now, my interests kind of come from slightly different places with both of these. So I am a psychotherapist, so I have a particular interest in all kinds of psychopathology and personality types and traits and different people in general, really, particularly people that are harmful to other people or can be harmful to other people. The other side of my interest with the spirit possession is so I would call myself a paranormal theorist, which sounds very grand, doesn't it? But all it means is I'm somebody that has ideas that comes up with theories about paranormal phenomena, and it doesn't mean that my theories are any better than anybody else's, really. It just means I find this interesting, and I scratch my little chin and come up with ideas. And I've done a whole series on spirit possession and covered it from every possible angle, and I recommend that series to you. It's annoying that I had to break it down into a series. When I was first a YouTube creator, first of all, when your channel's small, I don't know if it's still the case, but when I was first doing it, they only let you shoot videos of about 10 minutes long. So if you wanted to talk about anything at length, you have to do part 2, part 3, part 4. So a lot of my back history of videos are these things, of these series, and some of my best stuff, I think. And I wish those videos had the views that my current videos have, and that's a hint there for you to go back and look at my back catalogue. So I've done one on a very long series on spirit possession. Now I'm going to give the usual caveat here, that when I talk about theory, I suppose is the key word. When I talk about things that are paranormal or spiritual, things that it cannot be proven, I come at it from a very theoretical perspective, and I try not to get too bogged down in beliefs. I have beliefs, but I like to think of beliefs as like working hypotheses. So what my beliefs are today might not be the same as, they may well change in, over the course of the next 6 months or year, or whenever new information or wherever anything, a convincing argument comes my way, I might well change those beliefs. So I'm not telling you how it is. Okay. So if I talk about, spirit possession, I'm not saying that now listen here, this is what spirit possession is, because Markie knows all about it. I don't think anyone does. I think we're all guessing at these things, and mine's an educated guess because I've read a lot and studied a lot, but it's a guess nonetheless. Okay. And generally speaking, I'm quoting popular beliefs rather than my own beliefs, if that kind of makes sense. So that's what this video is about now. This video is also a response video to this lovely lady that you're seeing in front of you on the screen right now, who goes by the channel name of Nelly, not the Narcissist. Okay, so you don't have to have watched the video that I'm responding to in order to enjoy this video. Okay, if you've got an interest in either narcissists or the paranormal, and especially if you've got an interest in both, you'll probably like this video. Even if you've not got an interest in those topics and you're interested in things like critical thinking or psychology, hopefully it will still be of interest. Now, again, usual caveat applies. This channel is unmasked neurodivergent channel. I like it when people ramble. It's a bit of a pejorative term, but the channels that I like are things like Andy Edwards' channel on music and Pat Brown on criminal profiling, and they're both ramblers, and I'm a rambler. I'm a rambler. That's an old folk song I used to sing, although I'm a rambler. And this channel is full of tangents. So you just saw one just then when I started to talk about the folk song, and little meanderings, and I like to think that those tangents are the raisins in the muesli. Okay, the best part of the channel, and that's what I enjoy. I enjoy people that go off on little juicy little tangents and things like that. So I will do that, and if you don't like that, find another channel, maybe, and you'll find plenty on the same subject. Now, interestingly, not Nelly here often says that this is a topic that's not covered very much. But I would disagree. I have actually been made a point of looking, hunting out, I'm actually collecting videos where people claim that narcissists are demon-possessed stroke demonic, and there's a lot of them, okay? And I've actually covered this topic before, okay? So check out my previous video. You probably don't need to check out that one, actually, because basically my take on it there is that, well, this is a very interesting argument. I'm open to, convince me. If you show me some evidence, I'd be interested. But none of the videos that I've seen so far have given any actual arguments as to why people think this. They're just generally people coming from a religious or a spiritual background. They're either kind of new age perspective or Christian perspective, and both kind of, they give examples sometimes of people that they've known in their life and talk about behaviors and talk about their experiences, but they never give any actual theoretical arguments. They never give any sort of, if it was a court case, if we were trying to prove before a judge and jury that narcissists are demon possessed, then it would get thrown out of court because these people don't present any evidence. So Nelly, not Nelly, the narcissist, this channel talks about narcissists in general, but in quite a few videos, especially recently, she's talked about her belief that there's a demonic connection with narcissists. And she's actually had a lot more to say, a lot more intelligent, a lot more. Let me put my teeth back in. She's spoken more intelligently than the videos that I've watched on this topic up until now. And I've had some nice conversations with her in the comment section of her video. And I watched a couple of videos recently and thought, oh, I want to comment on this and I want to comment on that. So in the end I thought, no, I'll do a video, because otherwise I'd be typing forever. So first of all, then check out this channel and show her some love. Now, the reason she's called Nelly, not the Narcissist, so I haven't actually, she does comedy videos, she does kind of sketches, I think, in character, and I haven't actually watched those, not yet. I will pay them a visit at some point, where she adopts the character of Nelly the Narcissist, I believe. But she is not a narcissist. She, like me, which I forgot to mention, is a survivor of narcissists. So narcissists can chew you up and spit you out. Okay, so I think Nelly and myself have both been chewed upon by narcissists, and I haven't actually heard her full story. I'm sure that's in some of her videos, but I haven't gone into that stuff yet, which I will do at some point. So she's not a narcissist. Now, there are YouTube channels that are hosted by people who claim to be narcissists, telling you the kind of, the inside story and what it's like to be a narcissist, and in some cases warning you how to stay safe and avoid being harmed by narcissists. My favorite on that line, which I've done videos on and talked about before, is HG Tudor. So check out my videos on HG Tudor. He does good videos. He's prolific. He's done thousands of videos, and they're very varied, and he talks about celebrities who are narcissists, and he talks about he's quite funny. This is quite entertaining. So he claims to be a narcissist and a psychopath. Okay, and we'll get into what a narcissist is and what a psychopath is in a little while. Okay, we'll explain all that. So so I'm going to argue a little bit with not Nelly. I don't know what to call her. I don't know what her proper name is. Sorry, not Nelly. If you respond to this video, tell me how should I address you properly and respectfully. I'm going to take issue with some of her assumptions, and I'm going to apply a very kind of critical thinking approach to this topic. So critical thinking, just to boil it down into a nutshell, that's mixing metaphors, isn't it? There are two key well, I'm sure a lot could be said about critical thinking, but two very useful components of critical thinking, which come from deductive reasoning, is first of all, are your facts right? Are you have you gone to a reliable source, and have you got reliable information? And then two, is your rationale right? Are you making a logical argument? And in this, they always give examples of, like, if all dogs have 4 legs and a tail, and an Alsatian has 4 legs and a tail, is an Alsatian a dog? They usually give examples like that. It usually does feature dogs, sometimes ducks. But just basically, we won't go into that, because that's a whole subject in itself, and not one that I'm particularly well versed in, but a good argument. Now, this is the interesting thing: you can be right, you can be completely right, you can be bang on, without having referred to accurate sources of information, and without using a properly, a proper logical approach to your argument. You can still be right, but you're more likely to be right if you can verify that you've got accurate information, accurate facts, and that your argument is your rationale is sound. So I'm going to approach some of these topics with very much a critical thinking perspective, and bearing in mind that when it comes to things like demonic possession, we can't really, where do we get facts from on that? Because nothing's verified. It's not been tested in a lab. So what I'm going to do is look at some predominant theories and some ideas. But they're not just ideas that are off the top of my head. They're ideas that have been written about by cleverer people, cleverer folks than I, although there are many cleverer folks than I. So I hope that all makes sense, and you're sitting comfortably. I'm looking forward to doing this, and I may go on. So, just beware. I'm going to have a little slurp of my coffee. Not literally a slurp, because I don't approve of slurping. I've done videos on that as well. So, first of all, I'm gonna go into some theory, a lot of which is backed up by hard science, and some of which isn't, and I'll say which is which, about different personality types. Now, what I suspect not Nelly might be doing, and what a lot of people that make this argument that narcissists are demonically possessed or demonic in some way, is conflating different things that are going on. So rather than looking at, and sometimes things do get conflated, things overlap. But I think there are different elements to this, and we can break it down. We can. So I'm just looking at my notes, and I've realised I've left something off. So I have ADHD, which means I will probably forget. I've done more planning for this video than I normally do. I normally only go off the top of my head, but with this, but I will nearly always you know, at the end of the video, I kind of cuss myself because I've missed out a key point. So I'm going to talk about 8 behavioural types. Let's call them behavioural types. I'm just scribbling on my notepad here because I left it out. Yep. Okay, so let's talk about narcissists first of all, because that's what we've been talking about. That's the thrust of what not Nelly's talking about. So when I use the term narcissist, or in this video particularly using the term narcissist, pardon me, I'm not talking about somebody that takes a lot of selfies and likes to look in the mirror a lot. That can be part of narcissism, but what I'm looking at is what is effectively equivalent to a narcissistic personality disorder, which is a diagnosable condition. It's part of what they call the cluster B personality disorders. So the characteristics of a narcissist are, and I'm not going to go into all of this because, you know, you can find this in other videos, but, you know, control and an element of kind of emotionally feeding off other people. And there's a whole bunch of other qualities that go with a narcissist. But somebody with narcissistic personality disorder, generally speaking, they can be very, very toxic and very dangerous to be around. And I would say don't be around them. Okay. So that's a narcissist. Okay. So I think there are people who are narcissistic, and it's like a spectrum. I did a little personality test yesterday, and it scored me as I don't know what, 40% narcissistic or something like that. So people that have a YouTube channel probably would be narcissistic because they think people will want to listen to their ramblings. Being narcissistic isn't, it's not the same as being bad. There are lots of our favorite celebrities and performers and people like that will be narcissists, and they bring a lot of joy to the world. But if you're at the level of narcissistic personality disorder, then you're likely to be quite toxic and quite dangerous to the people around you. But interestingly, often narcissists also have, some people who they are nothing but sweetness and light to. Who can't understand why everybody else complains about them. So sometimes the narcissist will present strongly one way to one person and not the same way to another person. And we're going to talk a little bit about something similar to that a little bit later on when I go into a different section of the video and address another point that not Nelly the not narcissist has made. So that's what I mean by a narcissist. Now, a psychopath, often very similar. So generally speaking, narcissists and psychopaths, poor emotional empathy, and not much of a conscience. Grandiosity can occur in both. What is it they say, that all narcissists are psychopaths, but not all psychopaths are narcissists? I think that's the way around that they say it. So psychopaths get a bad press. I prefer, give me a psychopath any day in preference to a narcissist, because a narcissist needs to feed off other people, needs approval and attention, and narcissists tend to be more toxic than psychopaths. Not always, but so psychopaths, and this is where I take issue a bit with not Nelly, is she's critical of what's his name? Dutton, isn't it? It's Dutton and Dr. Dutton, I can't remember his name, and the Andy McNabb wrote a book called The Good Psychopath, and she was, as they would say in New Zealand, she wouldn't have a bar of that, which means, not buying into that argument at all. I think there are good psychopaths, and I think we rely upon them all the time. So psychopath is somebody that basically doesn't have a conscience. They have quite a shallow, what they call a shallow affect, which means they don't feel very deeply, although they can be prone to anger. And often, because of that, they crave excitement and drama. But a psychopath isn't necessarily harmful, isn't necessarily cruel, isn't necessarily violent or manipulative or any of those other things. We're going to get into that, and we're going to go into detail on that in a minute. But they're the traits. So they don't have emotional empathy. Now, there's emotional empathy and cognitive empathy. Emotional empathy is when somebody falls down, hurts their knee, and we feel it and we go, oh. Cognitive empathy is where we look at what happens and thinks, that person fell and hit their knee. That probably hurt. That's probably not very nice. That person probably isn't very happy. Okay. And the second one can be learnt. So people the psychopaths that don't have that innate emotional empathy can actually learn empathy, and they can become, pro-social, and they make very good first responders. In fact, there's done some studies that if you have a problem, let's say you're injured in a road traffic accident, or you get stuck underneath some rubble, or you're drowning or something like that, the person, the passerby that will stop and help you out, hopefully rescue you and save your bacon, is more likely to be a psychopath than somebody that's not a psychopath. And they're very good surgeons, because you've got to be a little bit, certainly you've got to be able to cultivate some detachment in order to kind of slice into somebody with a scalpel, haven't you? I mean, I'm sure it can be learned. I'm not saying all surgeons are psychopaths, but actually if you are a bit, if you're, and there's a spectrum as well, although to be diagnosed, you have to be a certain threshold. It would help. And also, if I was ever accused of a crime and I wanted a lawyer or attorney, as Americans tend to say, I would definitely want one that's a psychopath, because they're not worried. So basically, psychopaths aren't worried what people think about them, and narcissists are very concerned about what people think about them. Now, that's a very broad distinction, and of course a lot of people are both. I think Nelly, the not narcissist, calls them narcopaths. They certainly can overlap, and I'm going to get into overlapping in a short while. Okay, so the next two things I'm going to talk about, there's definitely a method in my madness here. So the first four things I want to talk about are all kind of have been studied, academically. There's a lot of research. We know stuff about the first four things I'm going to talk about. The second, the second four things I'm going to talk about are more theoretical, but these are more research based. So the second personality trait, I would say, not personality type necessarily, but a personality trait that somebody might have is sadism. Okay, so again, it's a spectrum. And there's a lot, if you think about it, I think it is innate in humanity, sadism, because if you think about history, if you go back to the classical times, people used to like to watch people being ripped apart by lions in the Colosseum. And then in more modern times, the things like bull baiting, which were really popular. So if you think about in the 1800s, around about then, I think probably a bit before as well, people would come out of church on a Sunday, and then they would all gather around a bull in a pit that's been attacked by dogs. That was the entertainment. And then television came along, and then we got horror films, and I'm guilty of that. I do like my horror films, and particularly like things like slashers. I don't like slashers particularly. I like good supernatural horror. So sadism is, I think it's inbuilt in us all to some degree. Though interestingly, that questionnaire that I did a Milan, which is a really good psychometric that measures you for different kind of personality disorder profile type things, and I scored really low on sadism, which I was quite pleased about. That was quite nice, quite reassuring. So there are some people who are sadistic. Now, there are different kinds of sadism as well. We're not going to go into too much detail about this. There's a sexual sadist and a general sadist. Okay, and I've talked about that in other videos. Or sadism. Let's not talk about so much people, but more as traits. And then there is Machiavellianism. So Machiavelli was a guy from the Renaissance period. I think he was from Venice. He wrote a book called The Prince, which was all about how to play the deadly game of power. So Machiavellianism is a term that's used to describe machinations, manipulation, devious ways to indirectly get what you want. And if you want a good literary example of that, then Shakespeare's Othello, the character of Iago, is a great example of a Machiavellian. So there's such a thing as the dark triad and the dark tetrad. So a triad is just a group of 3, a tetrad is just a group of 4. I can't remember which bloody way around it is now, but when you have somebody that's a narcissist and a psychopath, and one of those other 2, that's a dark triad. When it's all 4, it's dark tetrad. So so some of the people that Nelly, I think, is probably not Nelly has encountered and is describing, they're not just narcissists, they're probably also psychopathic and probably also sadistic and Machiavellian. Okay, so you're unfortunate enough to meet, you know, a narcissist. You will have, I mean, we'll have all have met these people and have these people in our life, and generally speaking, we probably don't even know it. So, for example, psychopaths, they say there are more psychopaths on church committees than there are than you'll find in jail. So psychopaths are, and often they're at the top of organisations, and that can be a good thing because they can be ruthless. They can make decisions that are for the best of the best. Oh, I need to rewind this because it's getting to the end. The best decisions for the organisation, which might be, you know, decisions about redundancy, or, you know, decisions that non-psychopaths would be squeamish about making. Okay, let's just leave it on her homepage for a little while. So I think the experiences that not Nelly is describing may be dark triad or dark tetrad, rather than your average, you know, Commodore Gardens narcissist or psychopath. Okay, not that they're great, but they're not necessarily that bad. And I think there is such a thing as a good psychopath. I really do. That's where I disagree with Nelly. There's a guy, I can't remember his name, who's actually a psychiatrist, who's a psychopath, who recognises he's a psychopath and has done a lot of work on it, and therefore contributed a lot to the world, and mitigates, you know, some of his what would we say? Not so much his desires, but, you know, is able to moderate his behaviour, even though, you know, he hasn't got emotional empathy. He doesn't go around acting on every whim, you know. He uses other mechanisms to hold his behaviour in check. Whereas we, you know, for the most part, people use their conscience to hold ourselves in check. The psychopath doesn't have that, but they can do it consciously, you know, and deliberately. They can apply, you know, a code of morality and keep to it in a very methodical way. A bit like Dexter with his code, or maybe that's not such a good example. Now, this is where it might get more interesting if you're more interested in the kind of the supernatural kind of side of things. And I'm going to bring in some material here which doesn't relate too much to anything that not Nelly has said, but something that a lot of other people have said, and which I've touched upon in another video, but we'll briefly revisit it here. Now, one of the things that Nelly often talks about is a soulless individual, which I think is a really interesting concept. And it's not something I've been able to kind of read up on or find a lot of information about, but certainly I have experienced, I can think of one person that I experienced, that I met, I saw only very briefly. I'll tell you the circumstances. It was, I was dropping some people off at a Beyonce concert in the centre of Cardiff, and on the way there was a guy on the side of the street, a ticket tout. Okay, so ticket tout, so they're selling dodgy tickets, you know. Excuse me. So sometimes they just buy lots of tickets and then sell them on. Sometimes they're full. I don't know what the deal was with this guy. But I was stuck in traffic for ages opposite where this one guy was selling tickets. And just from observing him, and he was, you know, barking out, you know, tickets for sale, blah, blah, blah. And just from, I was, you know, in quite close physical proximity to him, even though I was in my car and he was on the street. And I just looked at this guy and I just thought, this guy's got no soul. He has no soul, which is kind of interesting. So it's very unscientific, but that was my feeling. Okay. And I don't believe that, you know, the only way to access truth in the world is through scientific principles or through logical principles. Sometimes it's through intuition and through feeling. You know, I think that's equally valid. I just think we have to be clear where we're drawing on that intuition or that personal experience or that gut feeling, and where we're drawing on, you know, more objective evidence. But this guy, yes, soulless. Now, the other thing that's interesting, and I don't know if this is a parallel or not, but since since video games have come into almost everybody's consciousness, more and more people, and this is reflected in YouTube, are talking about non-player characters being a real thing in the world, not just in computer games. So if you're not familiar with video games, you can play a video game where some of the other characters are other people elsewhere playing the game. Okay, you might be able to communicate with them as well. You might be able to kind of text them and say hello, how are you, and people make friends sometimes through that, or you might not. You know, but the other people that you meet in this artificial reality, this world that is the game, are real people sitting in their bedrooms, playing along just the way that you were playing along. And then some of the characters in the game are just stooges created by the game, so nobody's playing them, they're just running on automatic. They've got a program, and some interesting videos where people go into these games and they talk to the non-player characters and ask them questions about, you know, are you real, and, you know, do you have sentience, and see what they do. And sometimes they give some quite spooky answers. But there's a theory that's going around at the moment that, and different people call it different things, but that there are kind of filler people, I think they're sometimes called. So that when you're out in the world, you know, some of the people that you see are real people that have, you know, living life, you know, got sentience and life experiences like you, and some of them are just part of the matrix. Now, I'm not saying I believe this is just a theory, and this is what I do, I bring in theories. Okay, so, you know, does that mean that they're soulless people? You know, maybe they are. Maybe it's a completely different thing. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what not Nelly would say to that, and anyone else for that matter. Now let's get on to, well, no, we won't get on to spirit possession just yet. There's another behavior trait, or perhaps personality type, and this is something that I've studied in a lot of depth: the psychic vampire, or sometimes referred to as an energy vampire. Okay, now a psychic, again, this is beyond the realms of science. This is into the realms of belief, but I'm 100% convinced that this is a real thing. Okay, so basically, you know, you will probably all have experienced this, that some people will drain your energy. Some people, you will have maybe even a short interaction with them, and it feels like all the life force has been sucked out of you. Your energy's down in your boots, and you think, well, what happened? And I've had this done to me. I've watched it happen to other people. There was one instance, I was manning a stall in some event. It doesn't matter what it was, but it's not very exciting. I'm not withholding some juicy information there. Just a bit boring. And the actual hosts of the event, who had their own stall, were right opposite me. There weren't many people attending, so I was sitting there, just sitting behind my stall, just watching the room. And somebody went up and spoke to this person opposite me for about 2 minutes, and afterwards the person that had been spoken to was visibly black under the eyes. You know, when people are tired, or they're a bit under par and they go a bit, you know, they have the black circles underneath the eyes. She developed those black circles under the eyes through 2 minutes of talking to this person. And I said to her afterwards, you know, you okay? You know, and what did that person do to you? And she said, oh God, yeah, the vampire. So psychic vampires can be aware that they're psychic vampires, but I think for the most part, they are not aware. They are just, I think, for the most part, people that, you know, for whatever reason, do not have enough energy. And when I say energy, I'm talking about chi or prana. I'm not talking about blood sugar and that kind of thing. Although I think these things can overlap. This is a whole video about overlapping, really. But so one of the theories is that, you know, there's an energetic system that runs in parallel with the physical system that that's accepted by Western medicine. Now, Eastern medicine, so for example, Chinese medicine accepts that there's another system that runs parallel with this, which is chi. And a lot of people will think that, you know, this is all very woo-woo, but actually, you know, there's a lot of medical doctors who are trained in both Chinese and Western medicine, and they will work with qi, as well as they'll be able to prescribe medication and diagnose conditions in the same way as your Western GP would. But they can also say, you know, there's a problem with the qi in your spleen. Now, if they were to kind of cut your spleen out and put it on the examination table, there'd be nothing wrong with it. It would be, you know, perfectly normal looking spleen, but there's something wrong with the energy that's affecting the spleen, and that's this more subtle system. And you don't have to believe that. Lots of people do. So if you go to China, it's going to be, you know, very popular, common belief. Less common in the West. But in the West, we talk more about auras and things like that. So the theory is that their energy on that level is low, and they are depleted, and whereas most human beings have the capacity to metabolize energy from the environment and top up their chi. You know, it's a little bit like, just in a very natural way, a little bit like plants absorb energy from sunlight and daylight. That most people would do that, but a psychic vampire, they're not able to do that for whatever reason. And often it does, in my experience, it does coincide with conditions like ME. But I don't want to, and I'm not wanting to cast nasturtiums, as I like to say, on people with ME. But I think there is an overlap with ME. So not everyone with ME is a psychic vampire, and not everyone who's a psychic vampire has ME. But I think there is that people with ME are probably slightly overrepresented in the group of psychic vampires. So psychic vampires, essentially, they feed off other people. Now, even though they may not do this consciously, they probably they've unconsciously learnt patterns for how to do this. So often they will hook you into a conversation and not let you go. Particularly like British people, we're very polite. So if somebody kind of, you know, keeps talking and we want to go, we'll stay. You know, we'll try and be polite. Americans are more likely to say, "Oh, sorry, I've got to go." So that's one thing they'll do, is maybe talk a lot. I've witnessed somebody, somebody I attended a course with, who was a very sweet, very, you know, quite beautiful, petite lady who would talk very quietly, and everybody would lean in, and, you know, and that leaning in was a method of taking the energy. And some people stir the pot. I've worked with somebody that used to, probably a narcissist actually, funnily enough, who would be very critical of people, attack people verbally, stir things up, you know, cause disharmony between different people, and that would be a way of feeding on the energy. And some people crowd feed as well, which is why a lot of people like being in big crowds. You know, the people that like to be at Trafalgar Square on New Year's Eve, that kind of thing, or, you know, concerts or football games, that kind of thing. And in a way, that's probably one of the least harmful ways of being a psychic vampire, because, you know, a lot of when you're in a crowd environment, it's like more energy is created. There's like spare energy, so you get the energy of the individuals in the crowd, but actually the crowd energy is much higher. You know, it creates an energy, so which is why people get high and feel good in crowds. And so like crowds seem to have almost like a personality sometimes, or seem to act as one, or, you know, there's all sorts of phenomena around that, which I won't go into too much. But some people who are psychic vampires will use that as a way of gaining their energy, which is, generally speaking, it's kind of free energy. So you know, less unethical. Now, sorry, not Nelly, I don't think you've referred to this. You might have alluded to it, but I don't think you've talked a lot about the psychic vampire side of things. So this is an extra thing I'm bringing in. Now, lots of people say that narcissists are psychic vampires and psychic vampires are narcissists. Well, we'll get on to what I think about that in a moment. I'll describe the other two personality, or the other two types, the other two typologies, for want of a better word. I don't know what to call it really. So just to do a quick recap, so we've got the narcissist, as in somebody with narcissistic personality disorder. We've got the psychopath. With psychopath is somebody with antisocial personality disorder and who meets a bunch of more extreme traits. You've got the sadist, is somebody who takes pleasure in the pain or suffering of others, or the humiliation of others. And you've got the Machiavellian, who's devious and plotting and planning, and full of crafty plans. And then we've got people who are soulless. Whether that's the real thing or not, I don't know. I think it might be. And then we've got the psychic vampires. Again, that's not something that we can prove, but something I'm convinced exists. And then we've got people who have got company. And I'm going to put them into two categories, although they can be subdivided into more categories than that. So this is something I've studied. I've met with exorcists. I've read loads of stuff on this. Psychic parasites. Okay, so there's lots of different theories. So spirit possession. Watch my series of videos on this, because I go into detail on all of this. Okay. Now there are theories that there are non-physical entities, or dead people, basically the souls, or the parts, the fragments of dead people. And I'm not going to, that's a really interesting aspect of it, but that's in my other video, that will sometimes attach themselves to a living person, into their energy system, embed themselves in somebody, and they're like stowaways. Okay, so they're not kind of necessarily malevolent. They're just the same as like non-spiritual parasites, which we've all got, haven't we? It's like how much bacteria we've got in our guts, and if we didn't have that, we wouldn't be able to digest our food. So they were talking about how heavy it is, isn't it, and how much it weighs, because there's a ton of it. So there are symbiotic parasites that we have as human beings, and then there's let's take things like fungus, like what's it called? I can't think of the name of it. I want to say chlamydia, but that's not right. Thrush. Basically the virus that the fungus that causes thrush is probably with most. I don't know I could have checked the facts on this, but I think it's probably present in all of us, but it's under control, isn't it? So sometimes, if in certain circumstances, we'll get an oral or a genital thrush infection, and that can be caused by being run down, or it can be caused by antibiotics or something like that. But it's in us anyway. It's I think it is, and normally our immune system keeps it under control. But sometimes, so and then there's worse things like certain worms and things that can live within us. So they're the physics. So I think these are like spiritual equivalent to that. So it's like a tapeworm. If we've got a tapeworm, it's not evil. It's not thinking, blah. It's just feeding itself and doing its thing. But not terribly good for you. So I think a lot of what people refer to as demonic possession is things along those lines. Now I think there is a degree to which those things can influence our behavior. But not necessarily to turn us malevolent. So, for example, if the earthbound spirit of an alcoholic comes into our body, we might start to crave alcohol more, for example, that kind of thing. But I don't think it's it's not like Hollywood, where you're possessed by a dead serial killer and you start killing people and you don't know why. Maybe sometimes, but probably not that common. And then there is the demonic. Okay, so and this is kind of interesting, because what do we mean by the demonic? So Not Nelly takes a kind of definition of that, or understanding of that, from a lot of biblical sources, like fallen angels. So these are creatures that have got an axe to grind. They hate God and they hate mankind because God created mankind, and therefore they want to mess us up in lots of ways. So they are very definitely malignant. Okay, so that's one way of looking at it. My favoured theory around what demonic entities are, and again, it's not just my idea, there's lots written on this, is that they are non-physical. They've never been human beings, which Nelly talks about. Not Nelly talks about as well. This is if they do exist, because there are psychological explanations for the same thing, and I'm not just talking about conditions like schizophrenia and stuff like that. There's a whole Jungian alternative theory around this, which is in my series of videos. But just going with the kind of demonic theory that there are demonic spirits that are nasty. Let's say nasty, okay? That embed themselves in people as parasites, and to a greater or lesser degree can exert control over their behavior. My belief is these creatures are amoral rather than immoral, and they are a non-human energy vampiric creature, and they feed off I don't really like the term negative emotions, but they feed off, they get a better feed from things like fear, hatred, depression, sadness, than they do from happiness or just bimbling along on neutral. So they will get inside somebody and feed off them. And that's why I have an interesting theory about exorcisms, because it's interesting. I've watched a lot, and I mean a lot, of videos by Catholic priest exorcists, and the way that the demons behave and what they say and how they go about things seems very, very counterintuitive to me. Because if the demon's job is just to sit within a person and feed off them, or to quietly lead them away from God and lead them to damnation, which is kind of more the Catholic Christian belief, they're better off being quiet about it. And not drawing too much attention to themselves. They can do a lot of damage and a lot of harm quietly and not get detected. But so many of them seem to get noticed. The person who's affected by them goes to the church for help, and then this whole theatrical performance takes place. And exorcism, people talk about exorcism as if it's like one session and you're done, and it's not. Sometimes it goes on for months, in some cases years. And I think if there is a spirit there, if it is a vampiric spirit, which is kind of what I think it's likely to be, I think they're feeding off the exorcism. And I think at the end of the exorcism, they think, "Oh, right, probably time to pretend we're going now," and then you just go quiet for a bit. And what they found as well is that I've heard a lot about exorcisms is that often, I'm getting into a bit more detail here, but there's with a demonic theory, particularly in a belief system like Catholicism, or a lot of Christianity would have the same belief system. There's different degrees of demonic activity. So there's like the temptation, which is that they reckon everybody is subjected to. The demons whisper in our ears and tell us to do bad stuff. And then there's I'll probably get these in the wrong order, but there's infestation. So you start to get the spooky haunted house. And then there's oppression, which is where you're kind of under attack from the demon. And then there's possession, where the demon's inside you and has got partial control of you. It kind of comes in and out a little bit, but it's got partial control. And then there's even something called perfect possession, where you and the demon reach an agreement and cohabit very comfortably. And it becomes a little bit unclear who's the demon and who's the human host. And I've lost my train of thought a little bit with why I was saying that, but anyway, never mind. So what I think might be going on, so what I think Not Nelly would be saying, would argue, and tell me Not Nelly if I don't want to misquote you, is that you would be saying that the narcissist and the possessed, and in some cases the perfectly possessed, are one and the same. And a lot of people would say that the narcissist and the psychic vampire are one and the same. I think also, Not Nelly, you would say that the soulless and the narcissist are one and the same. But also, I think sometimes that you imply that you think the sadist and the Machiavellian are one and the same. Now, what my model is, okay, is that these are 8 distinct things that can overlap. Okay. So think of, Venn diagrams. I do like a Venn diagram. So you could have somebody that's a narcissist and psychopathic and sadistic and Machiavellian and soulless. I suppose the passengers stroke the possessed, that's kind of either or, I guess, or you could have both. They could be running side by side, and psychic vampires. Okay. So what I'm saying is, in theory, I think that could happen. You could have, it's like the monkeys and typewriters thing, isn't it? If you give enough monkeys enough typewriters and enough time, they'll eventually write the complete works of Shakespeare. I think, in enough potential cases, all these things could overlap. But what I'm saying, what my argument is, that I don't think they necessarily overlap. Okay, I think that they are distinct things that sometimes overlap, and that one shouldn't assume that they overlap unless there's good reason to. Okay, and in which case some things might be there, but not necessarily the whole card deck might not be there. Okay, so that's the first point I want to make. A sip of coffee. So hang on in there. Do pause and grab a cup of tea, because this is going to be quite a long one. So another point that Nelly makes, and she's got a specific video on this, is the causes. Why do some people become narcissists and some not? And she talks about children of narcissists. Okay, because narcissists often do beget narcissists. That seems to be the way. I'm not sure what the academic research says about that, but I'm sure it would agree, depending on what research has been done, what hasn't been done. And I think I've got a very good so Nelly kind of puts forward the theory that you've got a narcissist that's got two children, one becomes a narcissist and the other doesn't. So Nelly puts forward the theory that there's some people are more predisposed towards being corrupted than others. Okay, which is, it's an okay theory. I don't agree with that theory though, and I'll explain why. So narcissists do not treat their children, if they've got more than one child, they generally don't treat their children the same. And there's a classic model, and it's really annoying actually, because I can't actually, every therapist in the world seems to be familiar with this model. But for the life of me, I can't actually find the original source of it. So if you do know the original source, please point me in the right direction. But it's kind of intuitive, and I think anybody that's been the child of a narcissist, or any therapist that's worked with somebody who's a survivor of a narcissistic parent, will probably agree with this. So I think it's, I'd say it's beyond doubt, but I can't prove that, and I can't name the source. Is that narcissists tend to manipulate their children, either consciously or unconsciously, by treating them differently. So one is often what they call the golden child. The golden child can do no wrong. Then you get the absolute opposite of that, which is the scapegoat, this is a child that gets the blame for everything, that gets put down, and is targeted for more direct abuse. I would say all these roles are abusive, but the scapegoat gets more direct abuse. It might be physical as well. Then you get the invisible child that the narcissist just doesn't pay much attention to at all. And the thing about these roles is they can switch. So you can, if as a child of a narcissist, you can have a little bit of all of them. But it's I think it's probably the golden child that goes on to become the narcissist, because the golden child often is the one that gets groomed and corrupted by the narcissist and becomes like a protege of the narcissist. What else was I going to? So the golden child would be told that they're like the heir apparent, and then the scapegoat. And there is some stuff as well that I've heard, and again I haven't found the source of this, about birth order, that sometimes the first child of the narcissist takes on a particular role and the second takes on a different role, and often then the general belief is that one of the children of the narcissist tends to become an empath, which is interesting. So one will become an empath, one will become a narcissist, and one will become, I think this is right, and I'm I'm speaking as well from my clinical experience here, and one will become just a very damaged person. So might become, alcoholic or addicted, or serious physical or mental debilitating, long-term conditions whereby they're not able to kind of function very well. So that to me is a better argument for why one child of a narcissist can become another narcissist and another won't. And often, they become almost like the opposite of the narcissist, which is the empath. I could say a lot about empaths as well, but that's another subject, so we'll try not to go down that tangent. It's good for me, not resisting the urge to follow a tangent. That's because I've got notes. And then another thing that not Nelly talked about. So we're going on to another point now. She talks a lot about good and evil, and is very wedded to that polarity of good and evil. And I won't say I've never. I mean, when I was very young, I bought into this. I've never, generally speaking, as an adult, I've never bought into this concept of good versus evil. Which is in all the Hollywood movies, and it's in a lot of religions. I really don't think the world and nature or anything in the world actually mirrors that model of good and evil. I think what we actually have, and Scott Peck, who I'll talk about again in a while, the writer and psychiatrist Scott Peck, he talks about atrophy as being the biggest problem in the world. He does talk about evil as well, but in a very specific context. But he talks about atrophy as being, one of the biggest struggles in the world. So that there's growth versus atrophy. I'm not sure whether he used the term growth or another term. And then there's other people that have said similar things. Now, Michael Moorcock, who's a famous fantasy author who I think is rubbish, and I've talked about in other videos, he talks about the forces of, I think it's law and chaos. But essentially, I think we've got kind of growth, order, law versus chaos, atrophy, decline. Okay, I think they are the two polar opposite forces in the universe, not good and evil. And if you look at that, why have we got, I was talking about bacteria and fungus earlier on now. Bacteria and fungus can serve a good purpose, or certainly bacteria can. And bacteria, when out of control, when out of balance, can make us ill. But I don't think that's a force of evil. When we get ill, when we get a bacterial infection, I don't think that's the forces of evil, but I think that is the forces of atrophy. And you need both, so you need to cut away what's dead to allow new growth to form. So I think, it's like spring, the new growth of spring, and like winter that brings frosts that can kill plants, and winds that can, knock down trees. Everybody gets a flu in winter. They're the two forces. This is just my belief. Okay, so this is just purely belief stuff here. I've never been convinced. I've never seen a good example of the universe being based on good and evil. I think there are things that we think are evil because we don't like them. It's like people talk about bad weather. There is no such thing as bad weather unless you take an anthropocentric, if that's the right word, take on it. There is just weather, and sometimes we like it and sometimes we don't like it. Death is not bad. Sadness is not bad. We need sadness, we need fear, we need, all the things that are, we perceive as negative. They're just, things that are essential for the balance. Because if you just have growth and you don't have atrophy, or you don't have wastage or dieback, then eventually we're all going to be smothered to death by vines. We'll be or we'll overpopulate, and that would be pretty horrible. So we need disease, we need hurricanes, we need earthquakes and stuff like that. They're not evil. They're just a different element in a different force within the universe. And I think it's those two things. So yeah, so I don't buy into this kind of some, you know, the good and evil, and really I think there's very little evidence for good and evil if you look at, like I say, if you look at the natural world. But it's very convenient, isn't it? It's it kind of is great for power. You know, so you say we're the good ones, and the other lot are the bad ones. You know, it's like kids when we were playing war. Are we the goodies or the baddies? You know, it's a great way to justify yourself and feel okay, and by making, and psychologically, you know, that's projection. That's, you know, there's a lot of psychological evidence to support that belief in the way that we think. So I think they're the main points I wanted to make, although I'm bound to have forgotten something. I did want to comment on the fact that I rather liked that not Nelly quoted something from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, because I'm a big Buffy fan. And funny enough, Joss Whedon appears to be a narcissist, and perhaps a psychopath by his behaviour. That's been found out recently, which is sad, that he really bullied and was, you know, really horrible to the original cast. And of course we've got Buffy coming back, haven't we? So that's exciting. So I just wanted to mention that. Also the vampire thing. So as well as psychic vampires, there are lots and lots of parallels between the narcissist and the if you like, the folkloric or the Hollywood vampire. And there's a great book on this called Unholy Hungers, or Unholy Hunger, and I've done a video on that, so check out the other video. But in brief, things that a narcissist have got in common with a vampire is often they're created by another vampire. So a narcissist creates a narcissist by creating a wound within them that then leaves them feeling empty, and therefore they compensate with grandiosity and a need to be in control. That's one of the big theories about what causes narcissists. So a vampire creates another vampire. You have to a vampire can't enter your house unless you invite them in. And the same with a narcissist. You know, you have to actually invite them in for them to be able to really harm you. I mean, yes, they can harm you from a distance to an extent, but if you let them into your life, it's very hard. It's very difficult to uninvite them. It's very difficult to get them back out of your life. I think that's something that not Nelly will agree with me on. And they have no reflection in the mirror, so they cannot reflect. They cannot. They have no insight, which is literally looking in. They have no ability to self-evaluate. So somebody it's apparently a good question if you're dating somebody and you want to find out if they're a narcissist or not. Ask them, you know, what area of your, you know, what part of yourself would you most like to work on and change? And a narcissist will be like, what? Change? I'm perfect. Or they might lie, because if they're Machiavellian, they'll lie to you. So they can't self-reflect, and they don't like the light, because the biggest fear of the narcissist is being exposed for what they are. And even kind of to themselves, you know, because they're full of layers and layers of denial. I mean, I like to think of a narcissist as it's a big ball of wound, wrapped up in, you know, a very glossy, fancy veneer. And they think that the glossy, fancy veneer is them. So I do have sympathy for narcissists and vampires, narcissists and psychopaths, and vampires as well. So I wanted to mention a couple of other sources. Now, just, I suppose this is more relates to what I'm talking about, the good and evil and that kind of polarity. There's a great channel, is a guy who is a ceremonial magician and occultist, and he talks a lot about the dangers of polarity, of buying into things like good and evil, and why that can actually hamper spiritual growth. And that's a channel called Mind and Magic. So it's not for everyone, because not everyone's into occult channels, and don't some people kind of quake with fear at the very mention of the word occult, because they think occult always means something dark, and, you know, and it doesn't. So he's talking about astrology and tarot, and he actually has quite a Christian outlook on lots of things. He likes to use the Psalms and things like that in a lot of his magical work. But he is always warning against the dangers of getting into that polarized thinking of seeing things as good as evil, good and bad, right and wrong, that kind of thing. You know, very seldom in the natural world is it like that, you know. And it's like the old Tai Chi symbol, isn't it? The what people call the yin and yang. You know, the one part, the yang part is, you know, which is the black tadpole, has got a little white bit within it, and the white tadpole has got a little black bit within it. So, you know, things might seem like polar opposites, but nothing is ever completely a polar opposite. So the other person I want to come back to is Scott Peck, M. Scott Peck. So I don't think he's as popular as he used to be. He wrote the book The Road Less Travelled, which is a bestseller. He's a psychiatrist and a Christian, although I think he converted to Christianity during the course of his career. So so I'm not sure all of his writings would have been from a Christian perspective. Maybe, you know, more so as he converted. And he wrote a book called People of the Lie. And Nelly, I think you would really like this book. And he talks about, he divides it into two things, really. One is, and it is about evil. He's talking about evil and what evil might be. So the first thing is he talks about human evil. And he states that, you know, religion and science, you know, were one. And then they diverged massively. And he says he thinks it's time for them to come back, you know, and rejoin. And he thinks, as a psychiatrist, he thinks that there should be in the diagnostic manuals a category called evil, you know, to describe a person. And he thinks it would be probably a subcategory of narcissist. And he gives a couple of examples of people that he's experienced in his life that just completely freaked him out, because it was just so incredibly horrible. Very, very interesting. And they weren't his patients. They were parents of his patient or partners of his patient, for the most part, I think, because as a psychotherapist, very seldom does a narcissist come for therapy. Generally speaking, you're working with the victims of narcissists. They're the ones that come for therapy. Either they're current victims, or, you know, they're like a parent or somebody in the past as a narcissist. Occasionally you do have a narcissist come for therapy, but what they want to do is they like the attention, and they will want to talk about how everything is their partner's fault, usually, all the time. And they don't generally stick around in therapy especially if you challenge them. If you challenge them or invite them to introspect, or, you know, look at themselves or anything like that, then they're off usually. Don't see them for dust. So yeah, Scott Peck. And then the second sort of part of the book is about supernatural evil, because Scott Peck, he kind of palled up with an exorcist. I was going to say a narcissist, and an exorcist, and actually took part in a number of exorcisms, and shares his experiences about that as well. So really interesting book from both points of view. Quite an old book now, from, you know, it's going back a bit, but very interesting. And then there's another channel that I watch occasionally, a YouTube channel. And I'll put a link to this because I can't remember what the channel's actually called. So it's a guy who is, I believe he's a psychologist who talks about narcissism, and his first name is Danish. And it's funny because sometimes I watch it with captions on, and he begins the video with, "Hi, I'm Danish," and I read it as, "Hi, I'm Danish," and I think, oh, it's an interesting way to begin your video, to state your nationality. So I don't think he is Danish. I think he's from India, but I'm not sure. I think he may have said, but it's slipped my memory. And he is, like I said, I think a psychologist. I mean, he sticks his neck out, because obviously if you're a professional, you know, even what I'm saying here, and I'm very careful with what I say as a psychotherapist, you know, if you start to talk about you know, paranormal and things like that, you know, it can get you into trouble. You know, people will use that against you to try and, you know, get you struck off. So I'm very conscious to you know, always put things in a way where that can't happen, or, you know, somebody could always complain, but it's not going to stick. So I will put a link to I'll find out what the channel name is, and I'll put a link to it. Now, Nelly, you'll find this really interesting, and I'll be really interested what your viewers think of this, because you've got a lot more viewers than me, which is great. He actually goes as far as to say, because he holds with the theory of a narcissists being demonically possessed. He goes with that 100%. He actually says that in many cases the narcissist has a certain smell, which I think he says is like rotting meat, which is horrible. So that's really interesting, isn't it? So my viewers, and also Nelly, you might want to throw that out there. I'd be very interested to hear if people identify with that and have experienced that. But he actually claims that that's I mean, there can be kind of cultural variations as well, you know, with things. So for example, there are mental health conditions that exist in one part of the world and not in another part of the world. So there might be something that's more common to Asia, perhaps. I don't know. It might be, you know, it might be completely wrong. He might have just, you know, maybe something was off in the fridge or whatever at the time, and he kind of, you know, associated that with a particular individual, and it's an error, or what, I don't know. I'd love to know more about that, people's experiences of that. And that does remind me as well, I haven't watched your video yet on the black eyes thing, narcissist eyes going black, so I'm looking forward to watching that. Now, sometimes people have big pupils, don't they? I had a friend who, when he was, you know, getting intimate with his girlfriend, he said that her eyes would go completely black, and it freaked him out. Now, a lot of this can be explained by pupil dilation. So in certain states, pupils will dilate, and sometimes people have got very big pupils. I've got very big pupils, apparently, because that's my surgery, and I had both eyes done and a gap in between. I had the laser surgery, and this was in the experimental days of it. I was actually a guinea pig, and they realized that in between doing one eye and the other, that they should have treated my eye in a wider area than they actually did, because when it's dark and my pupils expand, my peripheral vision is through the untreated portion of the eye, because they didn't treat that widely. The second eye, they rectified that. So some people have got bigger pupils than others, and some people's pupils dilate more than others, and in different circumstances. So and I'm sure with this guy's girlfriend, who was a friend of mine and was perfectly lovely, I'm sure she just had big pupils, or her pupils dilated a lot, and she was obviously enjoying herself. She was having a very nice time. There is some stuff about psychopaths and pupil dilation, isn't there? That I think their pupils react to, I need to look this up. I didn't plan on mentioning this, but there's whereas non-psychopaths pupils will dilate in a range of circumstances, with psychopaths there is a more narrow range. So I think it's that they dilate more to positive stimuli or to negative stimuli, one or the other. I can't remember. So it could be something to do with pupil dilation, but I want to speak to you because I haven't watched the video. I don't like it when people comment on videos that they haven't watched. But just on that idea, I just wanted to share that. And also another thing that's talked about as well is eyebrows. So this is something that I mentioned in another YouTube channel. This is Dr. Rangimarie, what's it called? I'll put a link to her on the channel as well. She's got a series on narcissism. She's a psychiatrist, and I think a narcissist survivor. And there's a whole thing that people talk about how narcissists do something with their eyebrows, and I can't remember. And she looks at it. I can't remember what it is. I can't remember what the conclusion about it is either. And lastly, there's something that people talk about called the psychopathic stare. So that might be something to look into again. And the only person I can think of that's talked about that, again, it's a YouTube source, is Scott Rouse. who's a member of the behavioural panel, and Scott Rouse has made a big study of psychopathy in particular. He's pretty clued up on narcissism as well, and he's talked about the psychopathic stare. I'm not sure whether it's a myth or not. So yeah, so there we go. So I've gone on for a bit. I said I would. I hope that's interesting. Like I say, it's, this is all theory, it's all beliefs, and if anybody who's watching this wants to comment and challenge any of those beliefs, great. I'm all for that, because I like to think, as long as people are polite. As when people are rude, I've got no time for that. You'll see my psychopathic side if you're rude to me. Now, just one thing I'll add at the end, which is kind of a bit of a plug in a way, is because I have an interest in all things spiritual, paranormal, occult, and like I say, from a very open system, a very open mind in terms of belief systems, I like to make myself available to people for psychotherapy for religious or occult trauma, paranormal trauma, supernatural trauma. So for example, somebody experiences something that they can't explain, that appears to an apparition, or it could be there could be abductees, anything along those lines. I am more than happy to if people want psychotherapy for that, maybe for the trauma, because often it does come with trauma, or it might not necessarily come with trauma with a capital T, but distress or difficulty making sense of things. I'm very open to working with people, and I will work with you from an agnostic point of view, in terms of I may say to you, oh well, it's interesting because what you've experienced is something that's that's sometimes described in Hinduism. I'm not gonna be selling you any belief system. Okay, so I might share with you certain theories, but I'll tell you that they're theories, and they may resonate with you or they may not. But it's not going to be my agenda to make you believe anything. Okay, but I will be using my knowledge of that topic to support you. Okay, so I might say, oh, that sounds like a Kundalini experience. Have you heard about that? Or I might say, oh, well, that's something that's Dion Fortune talked about. But essentially, I'm going to be somebody that's not going to ridicule you, not going to laugh at you. You don't need to feel embarrassed. And also, if I think that what you're describing is less of a paranormal experience and more of a pathology, if I think that you're suffering with a psychosis, or some of the symptom that might be causing your experiences, I will gently and respectfully share that with you and suggest, or maybe you should go and see a psychiatrist and just see what they say, or talk to your GP, maybe consider whether some treatment might help. And it doesn't mean I'm just going to drop you either. I can still carry on working with you and supporting you and talking to you about that, if we both agree that that's a good thing, and it's going to be helpful for you. But that's certainly something that I'm very, very very up for doing. And also as a psychotherapist as well, is like people tell you stuff that they don't tell other people, and the weird isn't that weird. It's like most people have got some experience that they can't make sense of, and it's hard to make sense of objectively, unless you entertain the fact that what we think of as the parameters and the boundaries of science are a bit wider than we think they are. And I have a very, very open mind to that. So I think every second person has had a ghost experience or something. I can't remember the statistic, but the weird is not that weird. And I think one of the things the internet is doing is normalizing some of this stuff, like UFO or UAP stuff. It's like something's going on. you know, who knows what, you know, we can all have our opinions about that, but we can't hide the fact that, you know, people are experiencing and recording, you know, things on a regular basis. So something is going on. It might be quite a boring explanation, you know, it might be some weather phenomena that we haven't, you know, understood yet, but there's something happening there. And yeah, so I'm not going to be dismissive, but at the same time, I'm not going to collude with you if I really think, you know, if you're in the grips of a psychiatric condition that you know actually needs a psychiatrist and proper treatment, I will recommend that to you as well. So and I think that's that's what I think it's a good a useful approach that I have, because I'm not selling anybody a belief system. So if you go and see a psychiatrist because you've experienced some weird stuff, they might just jump to the conclusion that it's psychosis and start treating you for that, or start kind of putting that paradigm and that belief on you. So I'm coming from an open mind. You know, you tell me about your experience, how it's affected you. I'll support you, help you with the trauma of that, regardless of what the cause is. And I'm not gonna I'm not going to start selling you a belief system. Whereas if you went to your local priest, you know, he's going to put it in a Christian context if he's a Christian priest, or if you went to like you went to see a medium or whatever, they would generally have like a kind of spiritualist, new age kind of approach, and might start saying, oh, it's because of this and it's because of that, and start to sell you a belief system, you know. And then before you know it, you've taken on board somebody else's paradigm, and you're filtering your experience through that. Whereas I want you to filter your experience yourself with a bit of guidance. You know, I'm not going to tell you, oh yes, you know, it's definitely this or it's definitely that, you know. I'm going to work alongside you with it. We're going to be, you know, fellow explorers, fellow detectives. Anyway, I don't want to do a big sales plug. That wasn't the purpose of this video. That was just a bit of a side point. I'm very bad actually at selling myself online. I undersell all the time, or you know, choose not to promote myself where I could do. So anyway, let's kind of wrap up. Let's kind of draw all the threads together. So first of all, Nelly, not the narcissist. Good channel, check it out. Subscribe, send us a love, tell her that we sent you. That's something we've got in common, by the way, is the comedy, because I've got a background in comedy as well. So we've also got in common that we're survivors of narcissists, I believe. I don't necessarily disagree with what Nelly is saying, but I think it's more nuanced and probably occurs less frequently, and isn't a given. I certainly don't believe that it's a given that a narcissist is demon possessed or demonic, but I'm willing to change my view if somebody convinces me. Got different views on the causes of why children of a narcissist might or might not become narcissists. I've got a different approach on good and evil. Not to say that I'm right and Nelly's wrong at all. It's just a different way of looking at it. And do check out those other resources that I've mentioned, because they're really interesting. And obviously the most important kind of part of this video is the bit that I will have forgotten, which is annoying. So there might be a follow-up video to this. Now this is a longer one. I hope you've enjoyed it. My channel isn't to everyone's style, but if it's not your style, you've probably dropped out by now. Please do check out those neglected video series that I've done in the past, because I really quite like some of the best work I've done, and I want somebody to, the narcissistic part of me wants somebody to watch it and show it some love. But to end on a positive, this channel, although we talk about all kinds of things, our purpose is to help people with retroactive jealousy, and the more people watch any of our videos, the more YouTube promotes all of our videos. And a big chunk of our videos, not the majority, but a big chunk of our videos are about retroactive jealousy and how to get get well from it, and they are literally life-saving videos for people who are suffering alone without any help, because they tell you how to begin your recovery process. So just by watching this, especially if you watch the very end, because YouTube likes that, it will make YouTube share the video more widely, and by doing that you will have possibly saved a life ultimately, because a lot of these psychological conditions are fatal, aren't they? Depression is a potentially terminal disease, and retroactive jealousy is a potentially terminal disease, and I'm sure a lot of people reach a premature end because of it. I haven't got the figures or the stats, but I would stake anything that that's actually true. So thank you, Nelly. Thank you again for commenting intelligently on this subject. I've enjoyed your videos. I'm going to keep watching your videos, and I hope that my disagreement and challenging you on a few areas does not cause offence. It's certainly not intended to. It's basically I just want to have an intelligent conversation with somebody about this, and I've not had the opportunity, and really until your videos have come up. I've tried with other people, and I've just got nowhere really. And there's one channel actually, interestingly, where it's just a feeling, but my intuition is pretty damn good. Somebody talks about narcissism all the time and demonic possession, and I'm pretty sure they're narcissistic. I can see lots of narcissistic traits in them, just in the way they present. No, I could be wrong, and I can't back that up with hard facts, but I bet I'm bloody right. So anyway, I've enjoyed myself making this video, and I hope you haven't lost the will to live through getting through nearly an hour and a half, but at least, like with the old series, you haven't got to keep clicking from part 1 to part 2, part 3. You can have your little tea breaks anytime you like. So thank you very much for watching this. I'll be back soon with another video, which will probably be about something completely different. I've got something really good in mind, actually. I had an idea today, which I might film now if my voice lasts out, which is a really sexy video topic, and it does have an occult theme to it. Yeah, see you in the next one. Rangimarie.